You can sit back. So, what did you think of Man Thing, Dad?
It was fine.
Yeah. So, last year I was planning on doing a review for it,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't
Yep.
because the camera wasn't working. So now I'm doing it this year, and it's not as bad as I remember, but it wasn't good.
Yeah, you last time you said you thought it was like so bad it was good, but now you thought it was just kind of boring.
Yeah, really. There were a couple. Whenever Shist was, he was hilariously overacting, which is pretty funny, but it was kind of just like kind of boring. The Thibodeau brothers were funny because of how like a much of a stereotype they were.
Well, yeah, I mean, I thought it was fine. It was just kind of a typical sort of supernatural esque horror film that had slasher elements, but it wasn't. It wasn't scary. I don't know.
No, it wasn't.
It was fine. I held my attention through the whole thing. I watched it and I didn't hate it,
The
but
the beginning was probably the best part. The beginning scene. That was probably the best.
well, it was kind of maybe an homage to like typical like slasher films.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I thought. I mean, there were no standout performances. Like the acting was kind of.
Terrible.
I wouldn't say terrible. I mean, they were professional actors, but they were not like your A-list actors. It was fine. Like, like I said, I didn't dislike it really. It was just
I think, there's some racism in there a little bit, but that doesn't matter.
well, it does matter. Racism matters.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So you're talking about the stereotypical portrayals of Indians.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean they weren't really. It wasn't really clear, sort of exactly what their traditions were, and yeah, I mean yes, they were sort of treated as these sort of I don't know supernatural creatures or I don't know.
Yeah, but like in horror movies, racism is kind of common, especially with cultures you don't understand, like Chinese culture and
Native
Indian
American,
culture,
yeah.
and like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah. I mean, and that does matter. Like those portrayals aren't good.
it's really common in that kind of thing. But honestly, if I complain about it, it's kind of like
Yeah, I get it.
it's not like like I shouldn't be complaining. This movie was released in 2005. Um, it wasn't released to a very wide audience, but it was released in theaters, and it made around $1 million after a $20 million budget, which means it won about a 20th of its cost.
Well, maybe they recoup their costs in selling DVDs or something.
I doubt that. I really do.
Mm.
Considering it was extremely hard for me to find a copy of this movie. Mm. Right now, it's a Sci-Fi Channel special, so if you want to watch it,
Well, there you go. They sold the rights to the Sci-Fi Channel.
yeah,
Well, happy Halloween.
I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have been for very much though. Yeah, and honestly, I mean, the thing is, there's like more. There's like more It's more like of a. I don't know. It's not very good, honestly. I wouldn't really recommend it. If you want to like watch a bad movie, maybe you're just in the mood for that kind of thing. Maybe if you've got drunk friends, it might be funny. But honestly, I think there are better films to watch.
I thought it was fine. But yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't spend a couple hours watching it. Just other things to do. Yeah.
I didn't much like it. It just kind of felt like it just kind of felt like, you know, big. It really felt like it was on a really low budget, but
Mm-hmm.
$20 million. I mean, that's not like a big blockbuster, but that's a sizable budget. But it looked really bad, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it looked really unprofessional. I know that they were trying to do stylized, but there were these cuts where they would zoom in and do crazy spin around, and that looked really bad. And I think the color grading was really terrible in some spots. And there was one location that was supposed to be like a dump,
Mm-hmm.
but there was only one car on fire, and that was like the entire dump.
Mm-hmm.
It was just one car that was on fire.
And why was it on fire? Like,
Yeah.
why would a car just be randomly on fire?
It was in the desert, so
Yeah.
maybe
No, it wasn't in the desert. This is the swamp.
yeah, no,
It's
I
in
think
the
that's
swamp.
in the swamp. Why did the car just?
I don't know
randomly
why
on
a
fire?
car was on fire. That doesn't make any sense.
And it's supposed to be a dump, but there's only like one car, and it's on fire. It's,
Mm-hmm.
Also, people don't like live in dumps, right? Like, I know the people that like work that own it would live there, but I don't know. Everyone's houses was like a complete, like weren't actual houses. The Thibodeau brothers were like, they had their houses were like this is like made of scrap metal, and the Pete who's one of the Indians is like, I don't know, he lives in like this tiny shack. It's like one room,
Mm-hmm.
and it's made out of nothing. You know what I mean?
Even the sheriff's office was like really run down. And
Yeah, and it's like you'd think. I mean, you think if there's like an oil company here, you'd think people are able to afford at least proper housing.
somebody's got a nice house. But we never saw Schist's house.
He probably doesn't actually live there.
Oh.
I mean, even the guard standing by, like, this is a rich company, so why isn't it that any of their equipment is, like, good?
And the school was like a shack,
Yeah.
kind of. I don't know.
And honestly, I know Schist was, like, manipulating this, but we don't ever find out how he's manipulating anything, because the state police and the FBI should have been called in by the point that this sheriff is coming in. Like, 30 or 40 people are dead.
Yeah, the other thing I don't get is, I mean, I know this is not the sort of question that you need to ask in this film, but like, the new sheriff comes to town. The sheriff is an elected position, right? Well, maybe not in Louisiana. I don't know. They have a completely different legal code.
Yeah.
But like, how do they just get a new sheriff from out of town? The sheriff is almost always local.
Yeah, well,
Like the chief of police, maybe, but the sheriff, no.
I think the reason is because all the other sheriffs have been killed.
Yeah, but yeah, okay. All right, well,
Also, like, why did people think it was a gator attacks? Like, I know there were like bear attacks in like Alaska, and there have been like shark attacks, right? And I know there was a famous one, right? There was like shark attacks in, I think it was 1919, where these sharks were like killing. How many people? They killed like 6 people, didn't they? Sharks? It was like a lot of people. It was pretty famous, I remember. Right? And then that was a big deal, and it's a huge story, and everyone was like, we gotta get the sharks. But then we think alligators killing 40 people in this tiny town, and we're like, who
nobody
cares?
knows, yeah.
Like, shouldn't we be investigating these alligators?
Yeah.
I mean, also considering that, like, alligators, that's more I feel like that might be more alligator. That might be more death by alligators in this town than there has been everywhere else in the U.S. all year. Right? Like,
Probably.
like, alligator deaths are not common.
I mean, there's a few every year, but it's not like, yeah. It's not like there's something that just 40 people in one town are going to be killed by alligators in the space of a few months.
Yeah.
I mean, most likely. If there are, that's a problem. So
The coroner was kind of funny how irresponsible he was being.
smoking during the autopsies, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if coroners actually do that.
I would recommend against it.
I feel like if the person that you are doing an autopsy on has a disease, then you could accidentally get it by inhaling it through the cigarette
True.
smoke.
Also, you could contaminate any evidence that you were looking for in an autopsy.
Yeah.
He should have been wearing a mask and like gloves and a gown, surgical gown.
He was wearing gloves. So what the thing is, he touches,
but he's holding his cigarette.
He touches. So what it is that he touches the dead body that's been in the swamp for like a day, right? And he goes and he touches around, and then he takes them, puts them on his cigarette, meaning that he's just smoking the body now.
Yeah, it's pretty gross if you think about it.
I think it's...
Yeah, he even made a reference to him smoking, so, like, I'm sure it was intentional.
Yeah, it's, like, not
This is not, like, you know, highly professional standard practice for coroners.
Especially, I mean, the Confederate flag imagery, I mean, that's not unrealistic, especially in 2005, but, you know, still.
Yeah.
I understand why this didn't make any money. Barely anyone watched it. Lots of people walked out during the middle of the movie because it was just terrible.
Huh.
Yeah,
apparently. I wouldn't have walked out of it.
There's like... It was not... Like, the guy that directed this, I don't remember what his name is like... I've heard of him. I've heard of some of the movies he's directed before. He directed, like, The Lawnmower Man, which is a Stephen King novel. Like, he directed some other things. Like, he's accomplished enough. So it's kind of crazy that this movie exists at all. And it is so terrible. And also, it is not based... I mean, it's based on a Marvel comic.
Sort of.
Or very, very loosely.
Yeah.
Because Man-Thing is just like a ripoff of Swamp Thing, though. That's
yeah, it is.
Really is. If... I wouldn't recommend it. I give it like a 1 out of 10. It's terrible.
I'll give it a 3.
3 out of 10. Okay.
Happy Halloween.